Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I'm so excited to have you back again this week. This week, we are talking criminal law, and I am very proud to be able to bring you Valerie Newman, she is an assistant defender with the State Appellate Defender's Office and Criminal Defense Resource Center. And I've heard nothing but very good things about her. And we had the pleasure of being able to have her on one of our campuses just recently to be able to speak about her experiences. And now you're going to learn from her as well. So, Valerie, thanks so much for being on the show this week.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Now, Valerie, as I mentioned, we're going to talk criminal law, and I know that you have gotten quite a bit of a reputation for being kind of an ace in criminal law, and I want to find out the journey, because not everybody comes into law school knowing what they want to do, and you might have or you might not have. But what was the journey for you in figuring out for yourself that criminal law was really the place that you wanted to end up?
Christopher, it was a journey for me because I did not go into law school thinking I wanted to practice criminal law on either side, defense or prosecution. My thought actually in going to law school is I'm a big environmentalist, still am, and I thought I would go into law school to practice environmental law. And in going through law school, I learned that I was not the type of student that liked to be studying statutes all day and figuring out how they applied to things. And I was more of a people person. And so environmental law didn't seem like a good fit for my skill set and for what I wanted to accomplish. And so I started looking elsewhere and exploring. And so my second summer of law school, I went out to New York. I worked for the legal aid division in their criminal defense division. And that's where I got the criminal law bug. I worked for a small office in Staten Island, and the folks there were incredibly underpaid, overworked, but the most dedicated group of people to this day I think I've ever worked with. And it was just inspiring to see the passion with which they practiced law every single day, fighting for people who had virtually no resources. They couldn't even hire their own lawyers, watching these lawyers fight the injustices in the system. And it really, really opened my eyes. And at one point, I was thinking about maybe even being a prosecutor, because I thought as a prosecutor, I could do a lot of good. I could help improve the criminal justice system. I could just make sure that, the right people were going through the system. But in going through that summer, it changed my perspective. And I decided that there was the only place for me was down in the trenches doing criminal defense work. So that was sort of my journey, my trajectory, I guess, and my interest in criminal defense work. Although I worked for a civil firm the entire time I was going to law school. That was the other thing that helped me decide, because I really just didn't like a lot of the aspects of the civil law practice.
Now, I know that you've been in criminal law now for a little bit of time, and as I said, you've gotten a reputation for doing very well in the criminal law field. And I guess what I want to get at here is I want you to go a little bit deeper and talk to me a little bit about what have you learned now that you have moved into the criminal law field. For those people that say, I think I want to be in criminal law, I want to do what Valerie does. What are some of the things that you've learned that have helped you to find the success that you have found?
Well, before I get to what I've learned, I want to say that I would encourage anyone who's in law school or thinking about going to law school to explore and keep an open mind. So very often people think, like I thought I was going to really be engaged with environmental law because I'm very engaged with environmental issues. And it turned out it wasn't a good fit for me. So I just really strongly encourage people to explore, to shadow attorneys, to do internships in an area of law that you think you're interested in, so you can see what it's really like on a day-to-day level. And I think what I learned, transitioning now to what did I learn, I also think one of the keys to being successful in life is being willing to learn every day, think every day I learn new things, and I learn how to do things hopefully better from each experience, and should enrich you. And there's so much that I've learned. I mean, one thing that I've always believed, but I think it's sometimes hard when you're engaged in the practice every day, is I've learned it's so important to have civility in the discourse, because it can be very easy for people to become entrenched. So people think of, like TV and the criminal defense attorney, this maybe sort of a bombastic type of personality, and a prosecutor on the other side, duking it out in court. And I'm not saying that never happens or never should happen, but I think that one of the big things I've learned is we have to learn how to disagree without being disagreeable. So when you do this type of work, you're up in court against the same people very often. And you have to learn to manage those relationships so that you are civil with folks, but at the same time, you can maintain your integrity and your zealous advocacy of your client. You don't ever want to do something because now you're friends with a prosecutor or you're friends with a judge and you don't want to irritate them. There's a lot of boundaries that people have to learn how to navigate. And that was a big thing for me. Learning how to manage all the things that go into an extremely busy practice was another big learning curve. How do you balance everything you have to do your job exceptionally well with maintaining relationships outside of the workplace and helping other people and being involved in things that you think are important to be involved with? So there's a lot of what I would call boundary issues that people have to figure out. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is to move at a comfort level that's comfortable for you. It might not, you might think you're doing too much, or other people might think you're doing too much, or they might think you're doing too little, but nobody knows you but you. And so I would really emphasize that each person has their own limits. And if you're the kind of person that needs 9 hours of sleep each night, then you should make sure you get 9 hours of sleep each night. And you shouldn't be cutting it. That's a sort of simple example, but making the point that you have to take care of yourself in order to be any good for anybody.
Well, you touched on a number of things there that I think I want to go a little bit deeper on. And that is, one, you mentioned about the importance of civil discourse and being able to build that for yourself and be able to have those relationships with others. And are there certain things that you did in your career to be able to help you to be able to get better at that? Because not everyone I know is good at that at first, but it's a learned trait. So how did you learn that?
I think the biggest assist for me in learning that was getting involved in issues I cared about, where I interacted with prosecutors, judges, folks from the MDOC, different stakeholders, police office, law enforcement officers, different stakeholders in the criminal justice system. For me, that's been an extremely important part of who I am as a lawyer, is trying to make the system better. And when you work with all these different stakeholders in the system and you can work together as a unit and you can hash out your differences and look at things from these different perspectives, and you see how it enriches the process and really makes, if you can all sit in a room together and work it out, and you can really make significant improvements to the criminal justice system. And that's also helped me from the perspective of there are people in every profession, right? Every profession, who have more integrity than other people. And so just because you run across someone on the other side or someone, whatever person it is from whatever aspect of the system who is maybe acting in a way that's frustrating, you can't label the entire system, by the actions of that person. And so that's a trap I think people fall into. All defense attorneys are this, or all prosecutors are this, or all police officers are this. It's just simply not true. I think the majority of people go into a profession wanting to do a good job and doing their best to do it with integrity. And we need to remind ourselves of that when we run across the people who don't behave in that manner.
Are there good examples of people of integrity that you have found in your career, people that are either well-known or people that are others, that you would recommend others look at as examples of how to practice and how to practice well?
I didn't have any particular mentor. The lawyers I first worked with, one of whom was Ron Riasti, who's now retired, was a very big influence in my life. I mean, he was extremely passionate and an exceptional lawyer but always acted with civility and integrity and approached things from a very thoughtful manner. So I think as a young person, just getting into the legal field, I was very lucky. And to this day, I'm very grateful that I had that experience to work with somebody like that, who is so well respected by everybody in the legal field. And that really was a big influence for me. And so I don't know that I can say, look to this person or look to that person, because some people appear on the surface to have a lot of integrity. And then when you get to know them a little bit better, maybe that's not the case. So my advice would be, if anyone is out there working with someone and they feel uncomfortable, there's probably a reason for it. And it might be best to go find another place to work if you feel like someone's doing things that are not as ethical as they should be.
You also talked a little bit about balance and finding balance in your life, your career. And I know that in law school, finding balance is very difficult. But how did you find balance, not only in law school, but how do you find it now that you're in your career and being able to do well both at work, but also to have that quality personal life as well?
You know, I think that's something I struggle with to this day is how to achieve that balance. When you're very passionate about what you do and you're giving it a lot of energy, you know, sometimes it's hard to find that place where you can cut it off. And for lawyers, I think it's a profession where you can carry your work with you 24/7 if you allow that to happen. And so I think every person is different, right? I mean, you have to find what works for you. I have friends who get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they do their exercising and then they take care of their kids and then they can stay focused at the office and then they can go home and go back and be focused with their family. It just depends on what you have going on with your life. I think the key overall is being focused, right? In every office space, there's people who spend more time talking with their colleagues than it appears they spend more time talking with their colleagues than they do actually working. And then it's no surprise when they say they're behind or they're not meeting their deadlines. So I think you have to find that balance both in the workplace of being kind to other people, listening when people need you to listen, but not being so available that it's interfering with your work. Being able to say no to people, or, I'm trying to get a brief out right now, but I'll come talk to you as soon as I'm done. So you can focus on your work, get it done, and then you can still be kind to your colleague. For me, I like to be busy, and I believe in the concept that the busier you are and the more things you have going on, the more focused you're going to be, because you have to be to get everything done. And the less things you have filling up your life, the more time it takes you to get things done. So I believe in structure. I think if you're structured and you can follow a structure, then you're going to be able to achieve that balance. You're going to be able to leave work at 6 o'clock and be able to get home and have dinner with your loved ones, or you're going to be able to leave work and be able to make your child's softball game or basketball game or swimming meet or whatever the case may be, because that's what's important. That's also very important to you, and you're going to structure things around it to make sure that you're able to get there.
Now, I don't know if you've always been a structured person, but I know that I've heard in the past that in law school, people find that having that structure is very important as well. Now, did you have that structure for yourself while you were going through law school, or did you have to get to that point as you were going through it? And if it is the latter, how did you get there?
Yeah, no, I'm always been a very structured person. So, and again, I do it by staying busy. So when you start law school, they typically start with the admonition that as a first-year student, you shouldn't be working. You should devote all your time to law school. But I had to work. I didn't have the money to do that. So, I worked all through law school. And I think for me, again, it has to be individual. Everybody knows their limits and how they work best. But for me, the way I work best is I knew I would work better if I had a job, and then I knew I had to get my law school work done sort of on a schedule, because I had no choice. And that was a very, very good structure for me as a person. And I think people heading into law school should give themselves the room in the first couple months to figure out how long it takes them to do the work that's required in law school. I mean, some people will adapt very easily, and some people, it's going to be a very hard adaptation. For me, I didn't do that well at my midterms in my first semester of law school, and I had a hard time adapting to the learning methods and and everything that they teach you in law school. And it really wasn't until my second semester that I hit a little bit more of my stride. And so the other thing I think is you have to give yourself the room. It's okay to be at that point as long as you're still, working hard to succeed. And if something's not working, you're willing to try a different method. So if people are outlining and outlining is not working for you, try a different method. I mean, keep looking for different ways till you hit the way that you learn best and can understand things best. And the other thing I think is really, really important, because law school can be so competitive, is you cannot be afraid to ask for help. I found in law, and of course I went to law school a long time ago, but I also teach. I mean, I've been teaching at law schools for over 15 years now. And a lot of professors are very available and they want to help you succeed. And so I would say don't be afraid to find a professor that you think is approachable, or someone in student services, or wherever you feel comfortable, but ask for the help. Don't struggle alone if you're struggling.
I think those are great points. Now, as you think back to your experience, and I know you just said that it was a while back, but as you've looked at your career, as you've looked at the journey that you've taken into your career, is there anything that now that you look back on your law school experience that you wish you would have done that would have helped you to either find your success sooner or prepared you better for the career that you are now in?
I'm not a big person on looking back, which it does not conflict with trying to be better each day than the day before. I mean, I think you do need to reflect on things and figure out how you could have done things better. But I'm also a big believer that everything you did made you the person who you are now. So I think the ways in which I struggled helped me figure things out. So to say I would have done something differently, I don't think I would, because I think every experience was a valuable experience as long as you can, take it and keep moving yourself forward.
The way that I always finish up all of our interviews is to open it up and just to ask you whether or not there's any other things that you would want to impart on those that are listening today, things that you have found to truly help you outside of what you've already shared, that would help others to find success in law school or beyond.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I would say is believe in yourself, because self-doubting causes a lot of problems. And believing in yourself does not mean, be arrogant and think you know it all or you can do it all. Believe in yourself just means believe that you can figure out how to get something done. And the best example I can give of that is I argued, I had a case, I won in the Sixth Circuit that was appealed by the Attorney General's office, and cert was granted. And I received a lot of offers from law firms all over the country, wanting to take the case over, basically driving home the message implicitly that you're just a poor, overworked public defender and you're out of your league to be arguing in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And it was a new experience for me. It was a scary experience. I would be a fool to say otherwise or to have thought otherwise. But at the same time, I knew the case. No one else knew that case. I'd been litigating that case for 8 years. And even though it's a different forum, a forum I'd never been in, I'm an appellate lawyer. I've argued hundreds of appellate cases. And I knew I could be prepared and I could be able to put myself in a position to represent the client as well or better than anyone else. And so I believed in myself. And I believed that I had the capacity to rise to that occasion. And so I think and the flip side of that is understand what your limitations are. So if I didn't feel like I had the capability, I would have needed to be the kind of person who could say, I don't think I'm the best person. And, maybe I want to argue in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a chance very few lawyers ever get. But for the sake of my client, I need to turn this case over to somebody who's better suited to argue it. So you have to know who you are. You have to understand your limitations. You have to be able to tell the difference between a true limitation and something that maybe you're just a little scared of doing. Because really, as a lawyer, it's the client that matters. And every lawyer should always be acting in the best interest of their client. And so if it's in the best interest of the client for you to do something, then you should do it. If it's not in the best interest of the client for you to do something, then you need to look for the best person who can represent your client's interests.
Well, I truly appreciate you sharing that and for being with us today. I look forward to being able to follow your career path and your successes in the future.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm always available for, if anyone has questions or I'm always happy to talk to anyone who's thinking about going to law school or in law school. Certainly about any questions or concerns they might have about maybe going into criminal law.
And what's the easiest way for someone to reach you if they do have questions?
Would be on my email, which is vnewman, Newman, @sado.org.
And I will put that in the notes for everyone today. I encourage you to reach out to Valerie, to talk to her. We've talked about networking in the past, and Valerie just gave you a great opportunity to be able to network with her. So take advantage of it, be able to talk to her, learn more from her, and start building up that network for yourself and setting yourself up for success for the future. So Valerie, thanks so much again, and I look forward to talking with you again in the future.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today. And remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.